Here's the situation. You've just sat down in front of your computer. You're locked in. You had just shot the best subject. You just had the best creative shoot, paid gig, whatever it is, but you're now in front of your computer. Everything's been sorted. You're ready to go through the edit and deliver an impactful and energy-filled video or product to the client. You're thinking about all the banger shots you took over that 10+ hour shoot that you just came back from and you're just still recovering from. And the edit is coming along just fine. And then it happens. You're at the very end and you want to go back through and polish it, add some spice, add the music, add the sound effects, and all that's working well. But then you realize you actually don't have enough filler content, like B-roll. You need more of it. You know, B-roll, the fun stuff that every filmmaker just throws into their edits that make it look just so flawless or dreamy or cinematic and go really well with all these kinds of voiceovers and beautifully orchestrated music pieces. And so naturally, because you didn't take the time to go through and get all that extra footage, so you head over to a resource site like Artlist. Now, let me pause there. This is not sponsored by Artlist. This is also not sponsored by anybody but myself. If you want to check out my LUT Packs, they're now available on my website. So I'm sponsoring this video. But regardless, because you don't have all the B-roll and necessary extra spice footage that you would need to add that extra punch to your footage or your edit, you head over to a resource website, Motion Array. But it's resources and sites like that that we end up going to as a default or a last resort because we didn't take the time, or you didn't take the time in this example, to spend a little bit of extra time to get extra footage that complement your main project. And then as a result, you find yourself subscribing to these websites and spending hundreds of dollars on stuff that other people have taken just to fill your content and make it more impactful. Now, for a lot of us, also, these websites are not really the most budget-friendly way, but there is another way. And one that is far more freeing and liberating, and dare I say, free. And so what do? Well, you get your own B-roll.
I'm walking around a small downtown area just to kind of demonstrate how easy it is to get B-roll, and also just for like a small, like very short film that I'm putting together. All I have is my Action 4 that I'm recording this on, and then my iPhone 17 Pro, just to show basically how easy this is. And I'm not using anything other than the Blackmagic camera app, just to kind of set exposure and balance everything out. But in that way, it should keep things very minimal, and that way it can just show how easy this is. Because really the goal for this exercise, and it's something that I implement to just everything that I do whenever I go to shoot something, or even if it's just for fun, is spend a little bit of extra time going around the area. I'll be able to pull from this later if I want to talk about color grading, if I want to talk about places that I live, that I visit. It could be used for a lot of things, but hopefully this shows how easy this is, and how you really need the most, you don't really need the most complex setups. It's just the most minimal thing you can come up with, an iPhone.
So here's what you do. When you go out to a job site, capture the thing you were supposed to capture, but don't stop there. Capture more. This is the part where when you get back into your office or your editing space and you're locking in, you're going to be thankful for this. If you know you have to be at a certain place at a certain time for a certain duration of time, and you know the subject, you know everything you need to do, show up earlier. Show up maybe an hour or two before, or stay an hour or two later. Sometimes I do both, because depending on where the shoot is, if it's outside and the lighting and how it's all working out, you may get things in the beginning that you don't get at night or at the end, and vice versa. And so what I always do is whenever I show up to a shoot, I try and show up at least 30 minutes to an hour before. That gives me enough time to understand the layout, understand what's going on, what's the game plan, but then also set my stuff up, get ready, feel comfortable, and do a couple warm-up rounds. Not only do you want to get there in time to warm up and get the shot and just be familiar with what you're going to be shooting that day, but you want to be able to look at the environment. So not only look at the subject for what you're getting paid to do, to tell the story of that particular thing or person, but look at the environment. How does everything else contribute to that image? How is the lighting playing off surfaces, colors in the area? Are there people? Is there an ambiance? Go record extra sound. Get as much as you can in the environment that the subject is in to fully immerse your viewer, to fully immerse your client in there. And my general rule of thumb is get more than what you think you need. Sure, it's taking up a little bit more of your time, but just get as much as you can. You're using a camera for a reason, for the flexibility that it gives you of just being able to capture anything and everything. You just have to apply your own creativity of angles and shutter speed and just all the technical stuff that you'll learn eventually. But just record as much as possible, even if you think it's not that important. You never know where that may help you.
And so one general rule of thumb that I follow is walk at least one time around the entire area in which you're recording in. It'll give you different vantage points, different ideas. You may see things from a different perspective you would not have. And then it also helps you tell basically the full story as far as like the context. So I just saw this sign for where I'm currently at. I think that makes a great shot. Hold it for 10 seconds. And then also another rule that I follow is every shot needs to at least be 10 seconds. 10 seconds of usable footage, because a lot of times there may be some shakiness when you're trying to get into position, or maybe when you're getting out of that position. And so I go for 10 seconds at the most, 10 seconds at the least, with a couple of seconds before and afterwards to set up and then move out of that position. Now at this point, I've walked away with 22 clips, each 10 seconds of usable footage. That gives me a lot to work with. So next I'll go back to my computer, dump all this into specific folders, and then pull from that whenever I need it.
Now, here's the other thing too. If, let's say, for example, you get to a shoot and you're so wrapped up with the actual subject itself, and you really don't get a whole lot of time to get that B-roll that you really needed to tell that story better, depending on what the shoot might be, again, we're still sticking to the free options here. Depending on what the shoot may be, you may find other scenarios, like other environments, maybe where you live, or in just other places around where you live, that could be very similar to where you shot. So I'll give you a case in point. There was a wedding that I did last year where I got everything that the bride and groom wanted. However, I realized in the edit that I did not have a lot of B-roll. But the way that this wedding was set up, there was a lot of greenery and there's a lot of nature aspects to it. Well, I frankly live in an area where there's a lot of my environment contributed to the film. And so I actually took a lot of shots with a lot of negative space like clouds and sky, things that you could not obviously tell were not at the venue. And I actually put that into the wedding film. Nobody knew, but it actually looked like I took extra time at the wedding venue to get a lot of these extra things, and it added texture, it added immersiveness to the film. But that was a situation where I didn't have the time before or after to do it, or maybe I just forgot. I don't remember. It was so long ago. But you could also think about doing that depending on the environment in which your shoot is located. Now, all that to say, here's the best part, why I think B-roll is so critical these days. Because not only does it immerse your viewer or give something better for your client, lately, one of my favorite things for having so much B-roll is that you have a media pool to pull from whenever you're making any kind of special edits for yourself, special passion projects, or even just revisiting older projects. I've been surprised how many uses come with actually having a large pool for yourself. And before I got to this realization, before I actually got to this practice and actually started laying this down for myself, I did find myself heading over to Artlist for a lot of these different shoots. But then a limitation came up to where I realized I kept searching for the same things on Artlist, and I had already downloaded and reused a lot of these assets, and I didn't want my films to be looking the same, like very obvious where I was getting my content from. And so now that I've been developing a huge pool of media where I can go back from older projects and pull from and contribute to newer projects, nobody really knows. A lot of the stuff that I deliver, they have no idea that some of this is getting pulled from older videos. And when you film so much, you're not going to be using a whole lot of that footage, and it's not repeating across videos. Now, For me, where my major focus is on social media, I do a lot of client gigs, but my biggest focus is YouTube. I don't want my YouTube videos to be repetitive. And so a lot of the B-roll that I'm going to be using in the future or have been using could have been from other projects, but they never made it into the final edit for that project. And now it's looking like it was brand new. But that's also less work now that I'm having to put in on the back end, trying to source these images and videos, and I can categorize it. You can just get really creative. The sky truly is the limit when you decide to just keep recording things for an extra amount of time beyond what you were paid to do. I will also say too that this helps develop your style, because as your media pool grows, you'll pull from eras in your journey where you may have been fascinated with a certain angle or color or just whatever. You're shooting a video your certain style, but styles develop and change over time. So as you go back to those other media pools and pull from that, and as they contribute to your film, you'll notice what you did at that shoot, and then you realize, oh, I want to get something similar but from a different angle. And so the next shoot, that's in the back of your mind because you're already going in there with the mindset of I need B-roll, and I want to try something different. And so you'll notice that as you go through this kind of style of editing and then storing stuff for yourself, you will be always reflecting on your current style of shooting, and as well as what you've done in the past, and want to get better or replicate certain things. And therein lies where you develop your style. And I think the last point I would make on this is there's going to be a lot of places that, because of a certain paid gig or because of a certain opportunity you may get, you may not get the opportunity to have access to those locations again. There's actually been a lot of environments that I've been able to be in because of the gig that I was paid to do. And because I got so much extra footage, I love the footage that I was able to get from those environments. But those are environments that I'm not really going to have access to like ever again, or possibly like rarely. And so now I have exclusive stuff that probably not a whole lot of people get, but now that I can implement into my style, into my shoot, and keep on that theme of looking like I've got a lot of variety, like I'm in a lot of different areas at different times of my journey. But it's going to add a whole nother level to your films if you just keep a growing media pool, but you just continue to shoot more than what you were contracted to do. But then also, if it's just for a personal project, you'll never fully appreciate until it comes down to this, how much you actually will go back and reuse this, and how much money it's going to save you by not getting on websites like Artlist to go track down the same footage that probably hundreds of other people have already used. Now, let me just say, this is not a knock on Artlist, because they have come, again, not sponsored, but Artlist, sites like that are super helpful. But as a side note too, as these websites, especially like Artlist, are becoming so much more like AI driven, I mean, a lot of the emphasis is put on AI. You may fall in a different area than myself, but me personally, I just genuinely love being able to capture raw stuff, raw images, and just use my footage. There's a pride in that, of being able to create a film that is purely my stuff, my images, and not some AI generated content or somebody else's that they filmed. Now I have to borrow it because I didn't take the time to give more attention to my film and to my storytelling. So I hope that all of that helps, and I hope that all of that kind of gives you a little bit more perspective into how you could take more ownership and be a little bit more careful and gentle with your projects and give it the attention it deserves. And it's going to help you along the way, and especially far into the future, reflecting back, developing your style, but then also contributing to a lot of the things that maybe in the future you just don't have a lot of time to develop. Pull from your data bank. That's it. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Hey.